Hello and welcome to Bull and Specs, and it's a big anniversary. It's like one of your big birthdays. It's episode 30, if I'm not greatly mistaken. And I'm Adrian Lacey in the Deep South, otherwise known as Kent, and in the frozen North, otherwise known as not really in the North at all. It's the Midlands. Why don't I get this right? And you know, one week it will make sense, this intro. Anyway, come in, please. Shane O'Connor.
Lacey, have you not done your geography homework again? I feel like, now you said that, and I'd forgotten it was 3-0 this week, and I wanted to get one of those.
Yeah.
What are they called? with a little thing.
A duck call?
No, not the... You know what I mean? What are they called?
Of course I know what you mean. I'm winding you up.
What are they called, though? Have they got a name?
I don't know. I genuinely don't. Eric?
How do people buy those things?
They just appear in crackers, don't they?
Hello,
Christmas.
I'm having a party, and I wondered if you'd got, one of those things
that go.
Yeah,
That's an elephant.
Name it, mate. Tell us what it is. You can't have one until you've told us the name of it. Well, it's got the.
That would be torture. You know, you know what I mean. It's got.
I know exactly what you mean, but there's no way now we've got a crowd round you that I'm going to tell you what it's called. If anybody knows, let us know. I've never really occurred to me what is the name of those things. I think mine's broken, actually.
The trouble is, I could imagine you being that incredibly pedantic shopkeeper. No, you're going nowhere. I know I'm due to close in half an hour, but
it's a bit like
I'll stay open just for the course.
Do you want any woofers and tweeters, Grandad?
Oh yeah, you got your bag on your head. Should we try and keep our younger listeners and viewers up to speed as to what we're talking about?
Google it.
Very good.
Google it. That's what I. That's my answer to everything.
It's the answer to everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
It will be with your son, baby Frank.
Yeah. Google it, son. Google it.
I've no idea, son. Just Google it.
Yeah. I don't know what they're called. They make that noise. Google it.
You know what he's going to say is, Dad, what's Google?
Yeah.
It'll all be AI. You just have to think.
Yeah. Yeah.
There won't be anything as. It's like your dad saying, "Oh, just check Yellow Pages."
Yeah.
What?
Go to the library. Remember those? They were all the rage, weren't they? When I was a kid.
They were at one stage. Yeah, they got books and everything.
For the youngsters
but we
listening
digress.
or watching, they were like a house with books in them. They were books lived.
You could actually take them away. Yeah, but they're going to say, "Hang on, Granddad, your favourite term.
Yeah.
Stop it. Is that your hip?" They're going to say, "Granddad, what's a book?" It's like a Kindle only. Stop it. Right, if you're going to be like that, I'm going to do this.
It's like an analog Kindle.
And for the people listening, neither of us is showing the other one what it is we're actually rattling. But you've got to guess what that is, because that's my story from the week.
Do it again.
Do I have to? Come on.
It sounds like a balsa wood castanet.
Oh, how did you guess?
Although you kind of defeats the object, didn't it? Why did you make them out of balsa wood? Well, I didn't want them to make any noise.
Yeah,
no,
they're quiet castanets. Oh, you say that though. In what scenario?
That's my. Yeah.
Mr. TJ.
Sorry, it's late.
In what scenario would you have two because you're a bassist, aren't you? But you'll have played on the drums, won't you? And we'll have lots of people.
Well, a lot of people wouldn't know this, but bands. Have you never been in a band? Have you? You ever been in a band?
Not a normal one. But not anything you'd recognise as a band.
For some reason, when bands rehearse, and this is always happening in every band I've ever been in, when they rehearse and we go, right, should you have a break and have a cup of tea or a fag or whatever you used to do in those days, and everybody always swaps instruments.
Oh yeah.
So yes, I have played drums. I mean, I've had a bong on them, but yeah, why do you ask?
Name the David Bowie track where they swap instruments and they.
Oh God, I don't know. What was that?
Oh, I can't remember now. It was in a documentary I saw last week.
Is that the one John Lennon dreamt?
Just know.
Oh no, Paul
scrambled
McCartney.
Eggs. Oh no, God, we're just dementing together. I've even forgotten what I was meant to say.
Have you ever played the drums?
You want to do that?
Drums? Yeah.
Oh yeah. In what situation? And this is don't write, don't. You can write, but you'll be too late because we'll have finished the show by then. But anyone listening or viewing can have a think through a possible answer to this. In what situation would you have two symbols glued together? And what noise? A symbol is very loud, isn't it? If you glue two symbols together, what do you think happens? How loud would that be? Would it be twice as loud?
It'd be quieter, wouldn't it?
Be quieter. It can't vibrate because It
It
damps
vibrates
itself.
the air underneath it, doesn't it? A cymbal.
Let me explain for our listeners.
I had to go to the
You appear
doctor
to have a
because I can't do that anymore. You know, I said to him I can't do that.
He said, "Don't do it." No.
Anyway,
You just-
do you want me
I
to
thought
say
you
what
were
we
doing-
did this
I
week, or we
thought
just
you were doing a sort of trembly smile. No, I want you to answer my question,
What was
just
the
like
question?
the shopkeeper.
Was it the symbols?
Yes.
thought I'd answered that one.
No, that was a sub question about what noise would it make.
Oh my God.
It's in what situation would you actually want a silent symbol? This is open to everyone, but hopefully you'll get the answer before one of us dies.
If you were playing on that, what's that track for 4 minutes 35?
Oh,
If you were the percussionist
John
on 4
Cage?
minutes 35,
Is there it's a nice answer.
is there a percussionist on 4:35?
I don't think there is. Is there actually music? No, it's a piano piece.
Is it?
The lid opens, and the person sits there for 4 minutes 35 seconds. And I can't sit here for 4 minutes 35. Have one more go, and people are shouting at their phones or whatever device they're listening to.
No idea. Go on, I've no idea.
Where
Why
would you want a
silent
silent
symbol? In a string quartet. No, because if
Yeah,
you
you
start
could have a
banging
whole-
the cymbals in the back of them, they got no sense of humour with that. I tell you, I've done it, and they
No,
they
they
don't see
wouldn't
the funny
thank you
side.
for it,
No.
but neither is it liable to happen. Stop
No.
it. Okay, this means time up.
This means
It's
okay.
and this means I've got a pen, a retractable one. Oh, sorry, just hit the mic. I've run out of time to talk about my week now, but or indeed you to talk about yours. I did too many Top of the Pops back in the day, and it went through different periods, but for several years, everyone had to mime. And so you don't want a crashing
right.
drum kit. You want a silent drum kit. All the
They used to make them out of
surfaces on the-
plastic, didn't they?
and I think they'd just be rubberized.
And then they put a cover on the
surfaces
drums,
for
wouldn't
the-
they? They put like a
Yeah, or
like
something like that.
I didn't know. It's funny you should say that actually, because I was just saying to you off air that I've just finished reading John Cleese's autobiography. So anyway, and I didn't realise he was actually in a Broadway production of Half a Sixpence with Tommy Steele.
Gosh,
He had a
I didn't
fairly
realise
minor part, but he was just saying about how he couldn't sing, and the producer of the show said to him, "Oh, that's okay, don't worry about it, just mime." And he used to mime, and they did a dress rehearsal, and he said, "I got a bit carried away." He said, "And I thought I'd have a bit of a sing song, in the singing, because it was like a chorus number kind of thing, whatever." And he said the producer collared me after the show, and he went, "Please, were you singing?" And he said, yeah, and he went, "Well, don't do it again." And he said, and I just imagine all the dancers and the rest of the cast thinking, well, that's a weird thing to say, isn't it? Don't sing again. But there you are, yeah. Should we quickly do our show and tell then? Because I've got a cracker, I have.
well, it's not a cracker. It's
And
more a.
I want to know what yours is.
I bet you do. You do yours first.
Okay. It's nothing to do with what I did this week. I'll tell you what I did this week. Next week then, and I just want to show. But
That'll be old news by next week.
you were having a guess, actually.
I get off air. I guessed child's toy. No, I'm not so far wrong.
You were absolutely
I said
right.
one of those
Yeah.
clockwork frogs.
However, how many?
So we should explain to our listeners.
Yeah.
It's a Thomas the Tank Engine trumpet, isn't it?
No,
Well, no, it's not.
no,
Thomas
it's
the
not
Tank.
Thomas the
But
Tank,
it
it's
looks
just a
like
trumpet.
looks like a Thomas the Tank Engine face on the end of the trumpet, the bell.
Well, do you know what? It made me think this week, what kind of person have you got to be to design a child's toy like this? Because it is,
You've got to be Cookie.
you're right, because it's trumpet shapes, isn't it? So you press the green button.
One of the valves.
If brass band is your
Excuse
thing.
me, is that copyright cleared?
It is, yeah. The yellow one, this is like a kind of
Ooh.
jazz thing, isn't it?
That's a shimmy.
And then the red one. But here's the twist with all of this. Like I say, what kind of weirdo do you have to be to then produce this thing where the tongue is sticking out the end, and then if you pull the tongue down,
Yeah. Mana. Can you hold it a bit higher? We should explain once again. Oh, if you haven't heard before, I'm looking at a different camera output, and you were hiding that. Can I see that? Where's the? Oh, the tongue is
It's like
Right.
a little switch
Yeah.
for it. But, I mean, you've got to be fiendish, haven't you, to design a thing like that, really? You think, or do
Shall
a
I
trumpet.
tell you the weirdest toy I ever saw? It was, it appeared to be a cupcake. So if you think of no, that's not the joke. I haven't got to it yet. So you can accept it's a toy cupcake. Now, can you think of the container for a cupcake? It's kind of...
The frilly paper thing.
Yeah. So
it's
it's
like
got
a frilly,
grooves.
a frilly cup, isn't it? That's why it's called a cupcake.
Crenellated, is that the term? Don't know if it is. Anyway, that, if you imagine unfolding that, pulling it down, and it turns into a doll where the case is the skirt and those are the pleats of the skirt.
Oh, wow.
It's weird. And if you smelt it, it smelt like a cake. I thought, what were they on when they designed that? But it's very effective.
I just thought at the meetings that they have, we've all been in meetings where somebody said, well, that's not a great idea. That'll never work or whatever. They must never, ever say that in those kind of meetings for toys.
They must have brainstorming rules where you're not allowed to knock someone else's idea.
So we go with the trumpet, and then you can imagine like a really dyed-in-the-wall toy designer saying, this trumpet, and it'll do all these things. And then the young kid comes along and goes, yeah, I tell you what, we'll put a little face on the end. And then...
Mana.
I wish I'd had the gig for that one, but there you go. What's
Brilliant.
yours?
Well, I'm sorry, mine pales into insignificance. What do you think it is? One last chance.
Go on.
Before I reveal.
Is it something in a bucket?
It's not currently in a bucket.
The way you
could
looked
be
down at
placed
it then,
in
just to check whether it was or not.
No, I was just checking it was out of shot, because that would be somewhat defeating the object if you could actually see it.
Is it in a bucket,
silly.
did you say, yeah?
It's not in a bucket.
Oh, I don't know then. I give
You
up.
might put it in a tray.
Put it in a tray?
You would put it
Ice.
in a tray. No.
Milk.
No, what am I doing now?
Pumping it.
I'm painting my leg, actually. I've realised. Should have cleaned it before you. It is a paint roller, folks. And for those just listening, not watching on the YouTube, I'll just give you a little roll, close mic'd.
Is it broken?
No, that's... oh, hang on.
Shouldn't make
be
that
better.
noise, should it?
I think it's... Yeah, it's got to be free to move.
Have you ever used that? It's still got the blue stripes on it.
Well, that's so well cleaned, you see. And this is actually on loan. Because I couldn't find one myself. But I've been painting the front bedroom. That's Daddy Roller or Mummy Roller, and here's Baby Roller. Look at this.
Oh.
But this one doesn't rattle enough. So that's, if you're listening, it's silent.
They're not as good, are they? Those the little ones.
No, which is why most people don't have them. But it's for behind the radiator, and that's not a euphemism.
No.
Anyway, let's put that on the pile of paint rollers.
I think that says more about you than any references ever could. The fact that you paint behind your radiators, whereas I would just like get close up and then put a shelf on the top, and nobody would ever know.
That does sum you up.
It does. You listen to the Bull and Specs podcast with Shane O'Connor and Adrian Lacey. I want to turn our attention to a story which is developing almost as we speak, as we're recording this podcast. Quite refreshingly. It's nice actually to be on this while we're getting the news sort of fresh in. I'm just reading on Twitter from Sky News, Adrian, that the Irish Times and Ipsos MRBI poll. Exit poll says that 68% of voters in the Republic of Ireland have backed changing abortion laws following a referendum. 32% have opposed it. So that means that it looks set for Ireland to allow abortions to happen, which previously they hadn't, which is, it's a hugely emotive subject as well. I just wonder, before I get a reaction from this, I just wonder, is it because of the criminality that surrounded this whole abortion law? I think it was 14 years, wasn't it? You would get in prison if you had an abortion. So the person who had an abortion would then get 14 years, and I think anybody who assisted it would have got 14 years as well. I wonder if it's the criminality around this which has made them change this or want to change this law. What are your thoughts?
The interesting stat would be the breakdown by age, wouldn't it? Which I don't know. We're obviously not going to get that officially because the government doesn't count that, obviously. But I suspect there might be someone out there, maybe one of the newspapers over the next few days, will be doing analysis. There'll be much number crunching. But I would be surprised if it wasn't just a younger generation working its way through. They've been raised with more liberal values, and also they might have travelled a bit more than previous generations because flying's a bit cheaper. People might have a bit more money in their pockets on average.
Yeah.
So it's just almost by osmosis, just the kind of the general culture you've grown up in. It must seem to some people, it would seem quite an anomaly for an EU country and a Western European country to still have that, as you say, the criminality around abortion.
Although throw into the mix, of course, predominantly Catholic country, and then that kind of gives you a bit of context, doesn't it? I suppose, in as much as as far as the Catholic Church was concerned, I don't know what their latest teaching or thoughts are on this. Is that abortion is a sin, and so would have been opposed to it. It's quite an interesting cleft stick as well, isn't it? Because, and I never realised this. I was watching some voxes from Ireland, from Irish people who were being voxed, and they were asking them what they thought ahead of this result that we're now seeing. And the interesting thing that a few people said, and I'd never thought of this, and they said, well, in a way, it's happening anyway, because, I mean, there's even a euphemism in Ireland. To have an abortion is, I'm going to England. That's what they say. So this was happening anyway. It's not as if you're gonna say, well, we're going to stop people because of this law. So the law was ineffectual in a way. So you kind of think, well, repealing it doesn't really make a difference apart from people won't have to travel, I suppose.
But the very act of travelling in the past with that purpose was illegal, wasn't it?
But again, you couldn't prove it, could you? I mean, there were no prosecutions, I don't think, on that basis. So the whole thing, you've got what's the point of the law? If the law can't do what it's intended to do, or doesn't stop what it's intended to stop, I suppose there is no point in the law, is there?
No, except that for some people, I guess it's sufficient that they wouldn't want, as they might see it, I'm trying to put words into people's mouths, but that they wouldn't want to see their own country tainted, as it were, by it being legal in their land. But yes, for other people, it would be, well, let's stand back and look at this, which is why, a little aside, but it picks up on something we were talking about, I think, last week. I think ultimately euthanasia will be legal in Britain. Just put that in, because they've virtually removed the threat of legal punishment for anyone assisting someone to go abroad for assisted suicide. It's a bit more complicated than that, and I'd have to get into the details more. But anyway, that's an aside. I am painfully aware, we are two blokes talking about abortion, and I'm painfully aware of the very passionately held views on either side. I almost wanted to see, I know there's clearly, there's no middle ground in a way. It's just a bit like that saying that, or a cliche that politicians trot out every now and again, you can't be a little bit pregnant. It's when they're trying to talk about things like you're either in Europe or you're not. Well, it turns out actually, on that issue at least, there are more shades of grey. What voice we don't hear, which I have heard at a personal level, and for very obvious reasons, I will obviously not going to name any names, but I've heard a woman talk not about regretting having had an abortion, but being, well, she actually talked, and forgive me if this is a little close to the bone, but she talked about killing a child, and it didn't mean that she rethought abortion. She didn't rethink that particular abortion. It just, she needed to express to me in her conversation, I got the feeling she was, to an extent offloading. She needed to say to me in quite strong language like that. And I think she was frustrated by, it just gets so polarised, doesn't it? Just as any black and white issue does. Yeah. Even to use the term pro-life, for instance, is, in my view, that sounds like you're meant to think it's people who are pro-abortion are anti-life. So it all gets so heated. But there is a reality behind this. Where I'm going with this is what I would like to see is more counselling available to women who have abortions. I don't know how much this has changed. I hope
before or
there
after?
is more. I was thinking more after. Before can be a bit more contentious in that there are some, we'll get back to that term, pro-life organisations who, when they talk about counselling, they're talking about talking a woman out of it. So I guess I'm more concerned afterwards. It doesn't. Well, I'm going back some years now. Maybe you know differently, and there is generally more therapy around and more talk about mental health issues and so on. But this woman I was referring to, someone I've lost touch with, so no one needs to think it's a very close friend or anything. But she seemed quite haunted by it. As I say, that's not regret. She's not anti-abortion now. She's not wishing she'd never done it. But I think if she wished it was less painful. Of course,
I've got to be honest with you. I mean, this was never really an issue. Despite having been brought up as a Catholic, this was never really an issue for me. I never really had a strongly held belief one way or the other until our son was conceived. And I guess, like a lot of couples do, Adrian, we started this countdown to him being born. And I kept saying to my wife, because it's 24 weeks, isn't it? I think in this country, that you can have an abortion up to 24 weeks. You can have one after if there are extenuating circumstances, like if it's going to be a danger to the life of the mother. But up to 24 weeks, like anybody can have an abortion. And there's loads of websites out there which tell you what size fruit your embryonic child is.
Broad bean.
We had
weeks,
in fact we called him. We were going to call him Satsuma when he was born because it was out of all the fruits, it was the one we liked the most. But at 24 weeks, and I just had a quick look just to remind myself. 24 weeks, you can abort a baby, which is nearly 12 inches long, 1.3 pounds in weight, and about the size of a cantaloupe. And that polarised me then, as I just thought abortion, I had a really strong held belief that it shouldn't happen, and it shouldn't be a normality. It should only happen under deeply thought through and extenuating circumstances. I hate it, incidentally, when people make it a feminist issue, because I don't think it is, because whilst the mother might be female, the fetus doesn't have a say in any of this, or the baby doesn't have a say in any of this, and could be male or female. So you just hogwash. I think if you say it's a feminist issue, for me, I can't deal with that at all, because I just think that is a complete red herring. But yeah, I just kept saying to my wife, I said, so 20 weeks. God, I said, God, so you can have an abortion now, and yet it's this size and this weight and this length. It's really quite a sobering thing to go through.
Yeah, but the last thing I would want to sound is judgmental on that. The trouble is, the two sides just talk past each other because they're not talking about the same thing. If you believe all human life is sacred, then you're going to believe that from the split of the first cell, never mind the cantaloupe stage.
That's a good point, actually, saying they talk past each other. It's like throwing different arguments at each other, isn't it? You're
exactly.
Right.
So that's why there is... I'm trying to argue, well, almost arguing against myself, but there's clearly no easy... There is no compromise. But when they're having... It almost feels like they're having a different discussion, then how are you ever going to get any agreement? There never was a truer statement about politics in general, and of course this is politics, but it really is the personal is political with abortion. But the saying that you can't please all of the people all the time, so you were never going to please both sides of the argument.
Do you think it's fair to say, and this, I kind of feel like this, and I wonder whether I'm being irrational or illogical when I say this, but do you think it's fair to say that if you make abortion easy, then you, in a way, either subliminally or overtly, you make conceiving a child less important, because it's so easily reversed. And I've tried not to use emotive language, like it's so easily got rid of or whatever, but it's that process is so easily reversed that it then makes the conception of a child less consequential. Is that a fair argument or not?
I'd say there's 50% of the species who might be, quite a chunk of them, I'm thinking of the blokes here, who aren't left carrying the baby in any sense. No, they can be if they become active fathers.
I mean, just anything outside of relationships, but just saying that if you make it easier to reverse the process, then surely you make conception, even minutely, less consequential. You've got to, one has to follow the other, doesn't it? Surely, I feel.
I feel yes, but I don't necessarily want to. We might part company after agreeing that. I don't know. I mean, some children, maybe many, are conceived, in a slightly drunken fumble, aren't they? But I don't want to get into, having a sort of metaphorical clipboard and saying, "Oh, you shouldn't have had that drink," and you should. I really don't think that's where it should be. But also the other thing that gets lost in all of this is that I don't think anyone really takes it that lightly.
It depends what you're talking about, doesn't it? Because sorry to interrupt you. I was going to say, it depends.
No, that's all right.
I mean, you're right. An abortion operation is a very different thing from taking the morning after pill. And we're talking about both ends of that spectrum, aren't we, I suppose? But to me, you're right. I mean, if somebody, the physicality of a 23 or a 24-week abortion is not something that you would take lightly. Taking a morning after pill is something that you probably would. And that's why there is a spectrum. And one is significantly easier. And that's all. I just there's part of me that just at the back of my mind just thinks, what message are we sending to the next generation that are coming through, or the next generation that are going to have children, that, if you don't really like the person, or you were drunk or whatever, it's okay. You can always get rid of it, and it's okay. And to me, Ireland seemed kind of that last bastion of that kind of protectionism. Whether it was right or wrong, I don't know, but.
Yeah, but with the threat of a 14-year jail sentence hanging over you, I mean, that I think is a much worse reason to not go down that route. So we're into the third and final act of Bull and Specs, number 30, the big one, 30. I'm Adrian, he's Shane, and we're going to go out on I think a slightly lighter story. This is, you've seen this one, Shane, about Boris wanting a Brexit plane. Never publicity shy, the former mayor of London, now Foreign Secretary, of course, was talking to journalists, as he is wont to. Who else is there to talk to when you've alienated all your cabinet colleagues? Or most of them. He's talking about wanting a plane that will sort of almost, I want to use the slogan from BA, British Airways, from years ago, fly the flag. And going around the world, drumming up trade. Because he feels the existing plane, he's got a couple of complaints about the existing plane. I misread this at first. I thought the Queen had a fleet of 146 planes, but actually it's their BAE 146 plane.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say how many there are, to be fair to me. It could be more than 146.
I think there's a couple of them, actually. I'm surprised you've never seen them, because they fly out of RAF Northolt, or they used to.
Right.
And that's where the Queen's flight goes.
Are you saying I'm a plane spotter?
No, but I am. This is where it all gets.
Well, we've established that.
Do you know why she flies a BAE 146?
No, but can I just say, I don't think, my turn to be pedantic, I don't think two planes would constitute a fleet. But anyway.
I thought there were a couple of them. But anyway, maybe three.
Right. Maybe you only need to. I mean, we've got 2 feet. That's a fleet of feet.
The Queen
fleet of. Yeah, sorry. Answer your own question.
always flies the safest, the plane with the best safety record, and that's currently held by the BAE 146. Or it's
Is that of anywhere in the world or of a British related
I
plane?
think you probably find he's anywhere in the world actually with the BAE 146 because they are. You find them. They fly out of London City quite a lot because they're one of the few aircraft that can do the steep approach into London City.
Right.
Because they got wings overhead rather than underneath the fuselage kind of thing.
Can I just point out to our listeners, you were actually motioning there with your arms very helpfully.
Yeah.
Showing. I'm repeating this very helpfully for audio listeners.
The only problem is I just marshalled 4 aircraft to the gate.
Yeah, I was going to say, you look like you were beckoning in.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Clearly, you're even duller than I gave you credit for. But no, I am fascinated, being dull myself.
Thank you.
At this fact.
I think.
So, but can we honestly imagine? I mean, one day you could imagine China overtaking Britain and America, conceivably, if they choose to, in aircraft manufacture. Could we see a day where, might not be Her Majesty, but His Majesty, Charles III, flies a Chinese plane because it happens to be the safest in the world? Can you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that could happen. I mean, I'm not sure that they would. I think there is no plane that surpassed the BAE 146 safety record. So that's the thing, isn't it? Is you say, well, it was the safest at the time we chose it, and there is nothing safer. There could be something as safe, but there's nothing that's safer, I suppose. But the really weird thing about China, in the same way that they make cars that are a direct rip-off of our cars or European cars, they're doing exactly the same with aircraft now. And they're taking Airbus plans and building more or less identical copies at a fraction of the price because their labour's so much cheaper. So yeah, I suppose it could do, couldn't it? It could happen in the end. Well, I mean, this idea of Boris having his own, like flying the flag or the Foreign Office having one, he's saying he can never get on the Voyager, isn't he? Which is the when it first came out, it was, what did they call it? Cam Force One, because this was Cameron's idea.
Oh, right, yes. And he only rode in it once, apparently.
Yeah, well, I knew it's an Airbus A330. So you've probably been on your holidays on a similar plane to this Voyager. They call it the Voyager. That's just what the RAF call it.
Right.
But it's an Airbus A330 essentially, and they've had it kitted out. It cost them £10 million to kit this thing out, and I don't really see what they spent the money on. But there you go.
On top of the
purchase price, yeah, however many hundreds of millions purchase price it is as well. But I knew somebody who actually interviewed or met one of the pilots because they fly out of where is it? It's
not Bryce Norton.
Bryce Norton. It's exactly where it is. Yeah, the big RAF.
I finally out-nerded you.
Yeah, you did.
I'm so pleased.
And at the time, they were trying to keep it on the lowdown because they didn't want anybody to know that Cameron had sanctioned this plane.
Right.
And there's part of me that kind of thinks, actually, I think Boris Johnson's right, is that we should, shouldn't we have something, as you said, flying the flag, shouldn't you have something that says, like Air Force One, here comes Great Britain, or, is that too sort of jingoistic, do you think, to have that, or...
Well, do you know what it put me in mind of? Years ago when I had my first gig in radio, it was a commercial radio station in Bedfordshire, and someone noted one day, we knew the boss had a rather nice Renault car, program controller actually, and I remember someone saying, yeah, you've got to have that because you've got to have the swagger, particularly as a commercial radio station. If it was the BBC, it'd be a Tok or a 50cc moped or something. But in commercial radio, you've got to look successful, even if it's on hire purchase. If anyone remembers such an idea,
even if you're a scummy little island just off the coast of France, you've got to make it look like here comes Great Britain.
That's where I was going. I don't think we're scummy, and I don't think ultimately that you do. But I don't know. I mean, would a plane ever swing a trade deal? Or is that not the question to ask?
All I know is that a few miles, it was where my old house was really, but JCB wasn't very far away. And JCB have got 2 of their own jet aircraft and their own helicopter. And they never seem to be short of orders, do they? You know, you go anywhere around the world, and when people say to me, like when we travel to Southeast Asia or we've been in Hong Kong, and you explain to people where you come from, or in Africa, and people say, where do you come from? And you tell them, and they say, oh, right, whereabouts in Britain? I know, you know, they kind of vaguely know where London is. And I say, well, it used to be in between where they made Massey Ferguson tractors and JCB diggers, because anywhere around the world, they know those two products.
Right.
You know, so I don't know. I mean, maybe they would. The thing, like the real objection, this Voyager aircraft has got 58 business class seats on it and 100 scumbag class, which presumably offer all the press that they take with them, aren't they? Well, why aren't the press getting on their own aircraft, and why are the press going at the expense of the UK?
Well, yeah, but look, call me a cynic, but
oh, you're a cynic,
and you're absolutely right. But
you told me to.
You've got. I think you would have done anyway, but also I think it will chime with your own cynicism, if I may say so. That you can control the journalists more under your own roof, as it were.
All the more reasons for them to throw them off and get them to get their own plane ticket, or use a correspondent in the country that they're going to.
Yeah, but politicians don't want independent journalists, do they? They want them in your thrall.
Yeah,
and with money being tight in newspapers, it's either we go on this plane or you don't go at all, Mr. Journalist or Madam Journalist, because we can't afford to send you.
And there they go. Don't write that, otherwise you're not coming back with us. You'll have to get your own way. You'll have to hitchhike at Kuala Lumpur Airport.
Or we'll do a demonstration of the emergency exit right now.
Yeah. But wouldn't that be a great idea? Because they'll have journalists in the country that you're going to. You could use them, and you know, it's a great way of making links with other countries. And I'm all for it. I would say make them use a BAE 146, where you can only get 50 people on or whatever in the comfort that they're accustomed to. And the journalists have to make their own own way. I don't see why I should pay for a load of journalists. The only issue is the distance that you can do, because you can only get about 2,000 miles out of a BAE 146, where I think a Voyager does about 8,000 or 9,000.
You really have researched this item, haven't you?
So yeah, well, I'm anything with planes. I'm there on Wikipedia for hours, saying to the wife, "Here, the wife, come and have a look at this. You'll never believe the wingspan on a BAE 146." And she says, well, I don't know what she's usually gone by then. She's usually left and then slammed the door. But
she would know not to even accept the invitation.
But that would mean that obviously if Boris Johnson had to go to China, he'd have to stop a couple of times to refuel.
Which means more speaking to journalists, no doubt, on the ground.
Yeah, probably. But couldn't you tie that in and say, "Oh, listen, we're coming. Can we pop and see the Swiss attaché while we're on our way, or go and see somebody in Dubai, or you know what I mean? Surely you could plan that and make it part of the route. Either way, you could have a fleet then for the price of one of these things. Presumably, you could have a fleet of aircraft. You could have a few aircraft that weren't, were not designed to be used by the Queen. I mean, the Queen having her own plane, for goodness sake, that's someone else I'm paying for, as well as weddings. I mean, I don't know how I can afford it.
You never know. It might be a gift. I just remember
from who? From me?
From no, not.
God, I'm generous.
No, I wasn't implying that, but
I can't believe how generous.
No, just the aircraft manufacturer. Look, if Jerry Anderson, maker of
but hang on,
they're
made by British Aerospace, which I owned, so it was still me giving it them anyway.
Well, okay, there is that. I was going to say Jerry Anderson, who the man behind Thunderbirds and all of that. He was given a Rolls Royce, and I think his then wife given a Rolls Royce as well, because a Rolls Royce featured in. I think it was Terrorhawks. It may also have been
Thunderbirds. It was Fab One was.
There was a Fab. Yeah, I remember that, but I think there was also a Rolls Royce in Terrorhawks. And I know a man who knows, and he may be watching this, so I better get my facts straight.
Anyway, on that bombshell, look at the time. We've run out of time again for another episode of the Bull and Specs podcast.
Oh!
And I thought I'd say it first, because you normally get to say it, and then you get to choose how you say where we are that people can find us.
Oh, you're not going to do the dirty on me and make me remember all the audio details, are you?
No. Tell them where people can... don't you wave your what's it at me, mate? I couldn't think of the name of it. What's it called?
No, you really have gone.
Your
a
roller.
paint roller.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Rolls Royce roller. Yeah. See what you did there.
Very clever, yeah. So go
Or
on. If
didn't do.
people want to see the pictures, they can. Where can they
Oh,
see
no, I
them?
wasn't going to cow it out. But yeah, okay, since you've given me a chance to cow it out and just do the one I know, the YouTube, you just go to, you won't believe this, Bull and Specs, search Bull ampersand Specs. I saw, Shane, this is more, forgive me, listener and viewer, this is more almost a private joke between us, but we'll share it. I saw a van with ampersand events on the side.
No.
I kid you not, that's the name of a company, ampersand events. So they've had a free plug. I hope they do something that's family friendly. Otherwise, we'll look very silly. But yeah, so it's it's the squiggly thing over the number 7, if you want a translation. And don't spell out the word and. Over to you, Bonzo.
And don't spill out into the streets, all of you. It'll be terrible. You'd stop traffic, the both of you. And don't forget you can get the audio as well, which contains great things like... Oh, I got to press the wrong button there, sorry.
Oh, you didn't want to do that.
You can get us on Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all the normal places where you can subscribe. And
do you know
like
what? Sorry, I've just realised sorry to interrupt, we're about 2 years behind the curve. Instead of iTunes, which is force of habit, we should be saying Apple Podcasts. It changed, as I say, virtually a couple of years ago, but well, certainly over a year.
Well, nobody
Just
told
a technicality.
me. Nobody told me.
Yeah, well, I think if you're going to call yourself a proper paid-up nerd, you should know that.
Well, until next time, until number 31, from me, it's... and from him, it's just a bit more of that, really.
More of the roller.